It's July 15th, 1997, at about 8:30 in the morning in Miami Beach, Florida, on Ocean Drive. You know, the Strip. Art Deco hotels, convertibles, beautiful people who look like they've been skiing the powdery line slopes, but yeah, somehow they still look amazing.
The type of place that makes you think, man, maybe I do look like that guy I see when I accidentally open my selfie cam.
Yeah, exactly. And walking down this street is a 50-year-old Italian man in sandals. He's just grabbed his morning paper and a coffee from his favorite cafe, a place called the News Cafe. He does it almost every day. Except today, the hostess noticed something different. He seemed wary. He walked past the entrance, circled the block, and then came back in, almost like he sensed he was being followed. It was a start to a real-life horror movie.
And guess what? The survival instinct kicks in. There is this little voice in his brain that says something's not right, and he listens to it. He almost doesn't go. But Spidey sense didn't Peter Parker hard enough, I guess.
Yeah, because he goes. He gets his paper. He leaves quickly and then walks 3 blocks back to his mansion, a sprawling, gorgeous, rich person place called Casa Casquarina. And if your home has a name, you know you're in for some pretentiousness. It's this ornate Mediterranean revival masterpiece on Ocean Drive with hand-laid mosaic tiles, frescoed ceilings, and a swimming pool with a Medusa mosaic at the bottom. And as he approaches the iron gate, a younger man steps out from seemingly nowhere and then shoots him twice right there on the steps of his home. The lights dim and go out, and this man exists no more.
The man on those steps was Gianni Versace, and he is one of the most famous fashion designers who has ever lived. The man dressed Princess Diana, Madonna, Elton John, Michael Jackson, all the people that Gen Z may never have heard of, but trust us, they were all very, very popular back in the 1900s. This man's logo was literally the face of Medusa. And, of course, she is a mythological figure whose beauty was so powerful, it could turn you into stone. Though the less we talk about beautiful women's stare, turning things hard probably for the better.
You guys, are your drinks out? Because this will be the first wow of the show. Let's move on from that. Now, his killer was a 27-year-old from San Diego named Andrew Cunanan, who by that point had already murdered 4 other people on a cross-country spree that the FBI completely failed to stop.
And if this was Call of Duty, you'd probably be able to get a UAV or airstrike with that. All right, Badger. So this isn't just a murder story. This is a story about what the 1990s did to our entire concept of identity and beauty, fame, and who gets to have those things. Because Versace and Cunanan, they were 2 sides of the same broken mirror, and we're heading to the 1990s, baby. This is my prime time. This is my power decade. This is my neon oasis.
Yeah, because we're taking you back to the decade where the crimp felt so right, and the Backstreet Boys taught you how to rock your body, yeah. That's when you go, yeah, yeah.
That's your one.
Whatever. Anyway, the crimp still feels right, and Backstreet's back for real. Now, during this, one man turned beauty into art, and the other man turned beauty into a weapon. And in 1990s America, the culture couldn't tell the difference between it until it was too late.
This is The Price of Beauty, part 1 of 2. Let's get into it.
Sneaky footsteps in the night, clues that vanish out of sight. Grab your hat and magnifying glass. We'll talk this case and have a blast. Mugshot mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists and turns that never fail. Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know.
Now, before we get to Andrew Cunanan, we need to understand why this murder shook the world. And to do that, we need to understand who Gianni Versace actually was, and not just a fashion designer, because he quite literally was a cultural earthquake.
Which sounds like an exaggeration.
No.
Let's talk a little bit more about him. And for those of you who only know Versace as the logo on a t-shirt at the local Nordstrom's rack, we're about to blow the story wide open. Now, I personally did not shop at Versace, and this was due to a chronic condition called broke-assness. But I do know what that sign looks like, and I certainly knew what wearing Versace meant. It meant money.
Gianni Versace was born on December 2nd, 1946 in Reggio di Calabria, way down in southern Italy. And this region is Magna Graecia territory. That's the part of Italy that was colonized by ancient Greeks going back to the 8th century BC. The ruins are everywhere. The mythology is literally in the ground. And as a little kid, Gianni played with the ruins of ancient Roman houses. He later said that when he first saw the face of Medusa, it was on a crumbling mosaic floor.
So take that image, this ancient monster goddess of beauty and destruction, and lodge that in his brain as a child. And decades later, it becomes perhaps the most recognizable logo in all of luxury fashion. We'll come back to Medusa, trust us, quite a lot, because she's basically the shadow protagonist of this entire story, and she's also completely NSFW.
Now, Gianni's mother, Francesca, was a dressmaker, and she ran a workshop with over 15 seamstresses, and young Gianni was fascinated by it. He literally made his first dress, a one-shoulder evening gown, at 9 years old. 9, guys.
Well, did he 100% Super Mario World?
I mean, you're showing your age, but I don't think he did.
That's what I was doing at 9.
I mean, I think that's pretty impressive. All right, but unlike you, babe, Gianni, he was different. So after studying architecture, he moved to Milan in 1972 and spent about 6 years working for various fashion houses. Then, in 1978, he launched his own label. And within a few years, he had fundamentally changed what fashion meant. So, before you say it, you wouldn't want his mom meeting yours, right?
That's an affirmative, Kathryn. So, do tell us what fashion was before Versace.
Well, it was cold. It was elegant. It was understated. Think minimalism. Think Armani's neutral tones. Think structured and restrained. Fashion was supposed to whisper. And then Versace came in and said, "We're screaming now, baby. We're going bold. We're going sexy. We're going loud." And he used colors that nobody else dared. Bright golds, electric blues, Medusa prints. He mixed punk safety pins with Baroque opulence. He put on bondage straps on haute couture. And the fashion world lost its ever-loving mind.
Now, that was a fantastic example, and it meant very little to me because I don't understand it. But guess what? That lack of knowledge does not extend to supermodels. That is right up my alley. Just like Sports Illustrated swimsuit models, they're up my alley, hanging on my wall.
Okay. Wow.
Now, Versace didn't just hire these models. He helped crystallize that entire supermodel era. In the late 80s and the early 90s, he paid Naomi Campbell, Cindy Crawford, Linda Evangelista, and Christy Turlington fees that were unheard of at the time. He didn't just want them to walk his runway. He wanted those girls to be stars, celebrities in their own right. He wanted those clothes to fit someone you knew, not just a nameless face. And let me tell you, I knew all of them.
Okay. Well, there is a legendary runway moment from his 1991 fall show where all of those women came out together, arm in arm, lip syncing to George Michael's Freedom. Is that how you say it?
I have no idea. Me and George were not like close friends.
Well, that single moment is considered the point where fashion and pop culture became one. The models weren't just wearing clothes, they were performing and they were the show.
So I like my asides, right? So
sure.
There is something called the cheerleader effect. And this is when a group of guys or a group of girls are perceived to be more attractive than if they were just by themselves. Okay. So if you've ever been to a bar, you know this. Like each one of them has a good characteristic and then you just mold them into like one perfect person. Mm-hmm. So 1 second you're all in, then the huddle breaks and you're left with a one-on-one on a fast break. And this is someone you no longer want to foul.
Okay. So it's Coyote Ugly.
What's Coyote Ugly? Like the movie?
I mean, the movie kind of gets its title from it, but it's basically the concept of like you're at the bar and you've been drinking a lot. And so maybe here you are, the pack breaks, right? And you're looking at that one person left behind. You're like, yeah, still looks good to me. So you take them home and you do the thing, right? But when you wake up in the morning, you look over and you're like, oh, what the did I just do? And you would rather chew your arm off than like have them wake up and see you. It's Coyote Ugly.
I have never heard of that. And I didn't know that's where the movie got its name. See, you learn new things here. That's why you tune in. But here today with Versace, that fusion of girls, that mighty morphine fashion rangers of models, that was celebrity spectacle. That's the Versace blueprint. Before Versace, designers stayed behind the curtain. After Versace, the designer was a celebrity. He was primed for a Dancing with the Stars run if he wasn't taken so early.
Oh, such a dream. That's a travesty. He would have been great. Put Bruno in his place. I'm sure of it.
Put you on the show.
I would love to be on the show.
Yeah.
Got to get more famous. Now, his inner circle proves his fame. Princess Diana, guys, he dressed her for some of her most iconic post-divorce looks, and you know them, guys, including the 1997 Vanity Fair cover. She had him on speed dial. Elton John was one of his closest friends. Madonna, Cher, Michael Jackson, Tupac, they were all wearing Versace. He was dressing rock stars and royalty and rappers all at the same table. Trust us, kids, these were the most famous people of the time. Now, some of them have done a bit too much choppity chop to their faces, and others have had life play some cruel games of death. But, you know, that's the cream of the crop. The celebrity Mount Rushmore of its time. You just have to trust us.
So while researching this story, I learned something about the dress, because there is the dress.
Yes, there is.
So let's talk about the dress. Now, this dress was what every dress hopes to be. This is a dress that other dresses were jealous of. They were talking behind its back. They were like, it thinks it's so much better than us. I bet you it doesn't even get laid tonight.
Oh, wow. Okay. But you guys, we do have to talk about the dress. In 1994, a relatively unknown English actress named Elizabeth Hurley needed something to wear to the premiere of her boyfriend Hugh Grant's movie, 4 Weddings and a Funeral. She called a bunch of fashion houses asking to borrow a dress, and they all said no because they had no idea who she was.
Now, I personally knew who she is from a little movie called Bedazzled, and she single-handedly changed my perception of all English people.
I mean, she was babe status.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, she looked great in that movie. I agree. Now, again, Elizabeth is calling all these places. She's getting all these no's, but she gets to Versace, and Versace said, yeah, let's do it. So they literally fished a dress out of a plastic bag at the press office. This black silk and lycra creation held together by oversized gold safety pins. And Elizabeth Hurley walked onto that red carpet and the world stopped. The next day, every newspaper on earth was talking about that dress. Not Hugh Grant's movie, the dress, which they literally named, if you haven't guessed it, that dress.
So one dress, one night, Elizabeth Hurley, this helps shoot her to be a global star. And Versace, he becomes a household name. You know what? That dress has a Wikipedia page. It topped polls as the most iconic red carpet look of all time. It literally, so I read, changed what was acceptable to wear in public. Now, Hugh Grant and Hurley would later become a power couple in Hollywood, which I'm just kidding about because Hugh got caught with his Grant out with a prostitute on Sunset Boulevard. I don't know if you guys remember this. Now, she did stay with him for 5 years, which is probably more than you can ask for, but the relationship predictably soured. And since this was the 90s and news moved much slower, we talked about Hugh Grant getting service for like 2 freaking months. The gal he got caught with, she even got famous. I'm just telling you, the 90s were a weird time.
Okay, so like I know you love your side stories, but so do I. I'm going to have to like not follow my ways directions right now and take you on a side story. My father probably talked more about this than any like gossip magazine that existed out there. He was so pissed off at Hugh Grant for cheating on Elizabeth Hurley. He's like, you have the most beautiful girl. She's a babe. She's like a sexy woman and you cheated on her? How fucking stupid are you, Hugh?
Yeah, I can hear this conversation.
You probably will hear this conversation after.
No, I might have heard this conversation.
Well, you'll hear it again, I'm sure.
And I can hear him saying it. How fucking stupid is this guy? Now, personally, for me, if I can talk bad about Los Angeles, I'm taking my shot. I'm taking my shot. Just like that shot of penicillin Hugh Grant had to take after he got service.
People are already drunk from the wows.
Got tuned up.
Well, on why Versace was successful, let's go with that, you guys. Donatella Versace later said Gianni made that dress for a woman who is sure of herself and who isn't afraid to break the rules. And that's the Versace ethos in one sentence. Beauty isn't timid. Beauty is power. Beauty breaks rules. I mean, beauty gets you into the club.
Let's put our sociology hats on for just a moment. Because what Versace was doing, intentionally or not, subconsciously or not, was creating this kind of new power structure. So there's something called, actually, celebrity worship syndrome. And this is where people become so obsessed with a famous person like Brad Pitt that it really starts to warp Gabe's sense of self. There's actually a scale, and it's called the Celebrity Attitude Scale. And this ranges from casual fan all the way up to borderline pathological. AKA, have you seen what this man looks like in Fight Club, dear God?
We don't talk about Fight Club.
Yeah. You know, as a man, we like to give other men compliments.
Well,
it means nothing. He looks very good in that movie.
I'm glad to know you have an affinity for Brad. Hashtag Team Jennifer.
It's not pathological, but it's an affinity.
Well, the pathological end of that scale is linked to narcissism, disassociation from reality, fantasy proneness, and even tendencies towards criminal behavior. So you haven't been arrested that I'm aware of, so maybe you're actually like a 5 out of 10 for Brad. But people at that extreme will literally say things like, if my favorite celebrity asked me to do something illegal, I would totally do it. Which I think you might now that I think of it. So, yay.
Yeah, penitentiary for Pitt. No, I think I'm grounded enough to say no. But really, have you seen that man in a Fight Club?
Oh, man. I'm still not into Pitt.
Oh, that's fine. It's okay. He has enough admirers.
He has you.
He doesn't need to be added.
He has you.
Well, he has me. I'm definitely in the Fight Club. You know what I'm saying? No. But it goes back to the 90s. And this is where that decade took celebrity worship and turned it into an entire industry. If you were there, you know this. We had Entertainment Tonight, Access Hollywood, People Magazine, 17. There was Star, there was US Weekly, there was Rolling Stone, there was Spin, there was Vibe. And they're all hitting their peak. Tabloid culture was exploding. Versace was building this empire, and Andrew Cunanan, as we're gonna see, was worshiping at this altar.
And that's what brings us to the Medusa. This is important, so you have to stay with us. We promise it pays off in the end. Well, we hope. It may pay off at the end, but don't hold us to it. You know what? Go into the rest of this with no real expectations. Okay, great. In Greek mythology, Medusa was originally a beautiful maiden, a priestess of Athena. So beautiful that Poseidon, the god of the sea, pursued her into Athena's temple and assaulted her there. And Athena somehow decided to punish Medusa. So she turned her into a monster naturally, snakes for hair, a gaze that literally turned you to stone. Her beauty became the source of her destruction. This was in many violations of the girl code. Victim shaming Athena? You know better than that, girl.
Athena, bitch crazy.
Yeah.
So she turns her into Medusa. And do you know the only way to defeat Medusa? Well, it was Perseus. And he was a half man, he was a half god, and he used a mirror shield to defeat her. He couldn't look at her directly. He had to see her through a reflection.
Well, Versace chose this as his logo because he said he wanted people to look at his designs and then be frozen, unable to look away. But the mythology goes so much deeper than a branding exercise. Medusa is about lust, vanity, power, punishment, and destruction, and beauty that attracts the wrong gaze. About what happens when being seen becomes fatal.
Let's talk about Andrew Cunanan. He was obsessed with mirrors, with his reflection, with being seen as something he wasn't. His entire life, as we're going to find out, was a performance, and he viewed this through a mirror, a reflection that had no original person behind it. I know that's a harsh freaking way of describing him, and you may be able to sympathize. You know, like when you're supposed to be a certain person to please others, but you got that dad from Friday Night Lights. When you don't feel like yourself. Have you ever felt like you're just watching this other person as you float outside of your body? You ever feel that way?
I mean, sometimes.
Well, that's depersonalization. Even for moments in time, it can come in waves. And you're like, man, that's what I look like?
I have those moments that I'm sitting in my office all the time, like, what the heck is this? And I see my reflection, like my hair is funky. I'm like, whoa, that's what you look like.
Yeah, you got a bunch of cameras where you work.
I know.
So, yeah. So, do I really look like that?
Apparently.
Really? Why did I wear this today?
What is that bald spot?
Maybe I should have shaved this terrible mustache. It's not really a mustache. It's a must shave. So what if this was your chronic state?
That would suck.
What if you felt that nothing you did would ever fill a hole? What if you felt like you had just fallen into some lightning sand in the fire swamp and you couldn't get out and the six-fingered man is waiting for you if you do get out? This is the mental state of Cunanan, I think.
And to get deep too, Versace built an empire on the power of the gaze. And he was ultimately killed by somebody who couldn't stop looking. Somebody who got caught forever in stasis. Medusa's story predicted this case thousands of years before it actually happened. So what do you think of that? Didn't think we could connect it, did ya? Ye of little faith.
Love it, babe. I love it.
Thanks.
And guess what? Versace's Miami mansion, Casa Casuarina, at the bottom of the swimming pool, there was this hand-laid mosaic of Medusa. Versace literally swam above the face of this monster every day. It was waiting for him at home like a really crazy housewife that also wanted to kill him.
I mean, we've told stories about that, that's for sure.
All right, let's talk about what was happening in America. Because before we meet our killer, we need to set a stage. Very importantly, because this story only makes sense inside the absolute fever dream that was a 1990s America.
Yeah, the 90s are so weird because on the surface, everything was great. The economy was booming, the dot-com bubble hadn't burst yet, the internet was emerging, we were still giddy over hearing, you got mail. America was the sole superpower after the Cold War ended, the Berlin Wall had fallen. Francis Fukuyama literally published an essay and then a book called The End of History, arguing that liberal democracy had won forever and nothing dramatic would ever happen again.
Spoiler alert. He was spectacularly wrong. If you live in 2026, you know this. But at the time, there was a sense of, what do we do now? This big existential threat was over. Russia was now going to be free. It was going to be a democratic society. No shirtless horse-riding dictator would ever rule. But what Americans did is they needed to fill this empty space and they turned to consumption. Image, performance, celebrity. They turned to John Stamos and Marky Mark.
Yeah, this was the decade of heroin chic. Fashion literally glorifying emaciation and drug use as an aesthetic. You just had to be there or you wouldn't think it was real, but it was.
Yeah, you should see those Calvin Klein ones.
Ugh, were those also on your wall?
No.
Okay.
Those were not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Just Ireland.
Not visually appealing to me.
Got it. Well, it was the decade of the O.J. Simpson trial turning murder into must-see TV. The Jean-Benet Ramsey case turning a child's death into entertainment. The Monica Lewinsky scandal combining sex and shame, and images of dresses and cigars you couldn't unsee. The death of Kurt Cobain. Everything was a spectacle. Everything was for sale.
And underneath the prosperity, people were anxious. Maybe subconsciously, maybe not. Because when you take away this big external threat, when there's no Cold War and there's no depression and there's no World War, people turn inward. They start asking, who am I? What am I worth? Am I on sale tonight? And the 90s answered that question with, you're worth what you look like. You're worth what you own. You're worth what people see. Don't turn inward, my friends. You may only find answers outside yourself. In the 90s, we're all about defining your life in a metaphorical mall. You go there, you pick your store, you pick your fashion. Maybe it's Wet Seal. Maybe it's Charlotte Russe. Maybe it's Foot Locker. Choose what you like to eat at the food court. What brands? What celebrities? Define yourself in 10 easy steps. I was a hot dog on the stick type of guy. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know what that meant.
There's a French philosopher named Jean Baudrillard who was writing about exactly this. He had this concept called simulacra and simulation.
And I love this theory.
It's actually not that complicated of a theory either. Baudrillard said that in a media-saturated consumer society, copies and images end up replacing reality. We stop living real lives and start performing versions of lives we've seen on TV or in magazine. The simulation becomes more than the reality. And he called that hyperreality. I mean, think about social media today. It's the same concept.
Okay, give me a concrete example.
All right, so let's think 90s. You didn't just buy Nikes because you needed shoes. You bought Nikes because you were buying the image of Michael freaking Jordan. And you didn't just watch Friends. You decorated your apartment like their apartment, and you scream shit like, that at every opportunity. I still do. That's for dang sure. Because these things become your identity. So you didn't buy Versace because you needed a shirt. You bought Versace because you were purchasing access to a world of beauty and glamour that didn't actually exist. The product was the fantasy. This was the poolside Vegas trip. There is no reality when everything is fake, though tequila does taste like tequila and may transcend the Matrix.
So the advent of AI, my God, nothing is real anymore. Everything, to your point, is a copy of a copy of a copy. And I see where you're going with this. Andrew Cunanan was the ultimate Baudrillard case. He was literally a simulation of a person. And this is not quite like the Matrix. That's a little bit different. He was a copy with no original. He's a performance with nothing that's real underneath. He was superficially superficial. It sounds harsh, but we gotta paint a picture of why he did what he did, and this is what we think.
Exactly. He was what Baudrillard would call a third-order simulacrum. Not a Star Wars reference, though it does sound like one. But to have a concise definition, this is the signs or images that mask the absence of a notable reality, creating a hyperreal environment where the copy has no original. So in this stage, simulation replaces reality entirely. Andrew didn't just pretend to be rich, he simulated richness so completely that the simulation became its own reality. And when the simulation collapsed, well, there was nothing left. And when there's nothing left, you become desperate. And desperate people are dangerous people. And desperate people, well, they kill.
Let's give you a little social context, because we really need to talk about what it meant to be a gay man in the 1990s America. Because both Versace and Cunanan were very openly gay, and the landscape that they were navigating during that time was absolutely brutal.
Yeah, because this was the era of don't ask, don't tell, which as a young girl sounded ridiculous to me, but now as an adult, it still sounds freaking ridiculous. In 1993, President Clinton signed this policy that said gay people could serve in the military, but only if they lied about who they were. If you were outed, you were discharged, and thousands of people lost their careers.
So the government is literally telling citizens, your identity is acceptable only if you hide it and it's invisible. You should probably keep those thoughts to yourself. But you know what you should do? You should go drill with all these fabulously in shape same-sex men in arms. And we command you not to feel anything, because loins are only on a roast.
Oh my gosh.
But to be very serious, AIDS was still decimating this community.
Mm-hmm.
The crisis had been raging since the early 80s, and let's say the government's response under Reagan had been catastrophically horrible. Silence, there was neglect, there was active hostility. But by the mid-90s, a new treatment called heart therapy was becoming available. And this was one of the most effective treatments against HIV that had been developed at the time. This was a cocktail of drugs that worked together to stymie progression, and it was genuinely life-saving. But the damage here was done. An entire generation of gay men had watched their friends, they had watched their lovers, and whole communities die, and the politicians just debated whether they even deserved help.
And then in 1996, just 1 year before Versace's murder, Congress passed the Defense of Marriage Act, which federally defined marriage as between one man and one woman. DOMA denied same-sex couples over 1,000 federal benefits, Social Security, immigration, tax filing, hospital visitation rights. The message was clear. You can exist, but you don't count.
And in this landscape, you had two wildly different responses. Gianni Versace, he was one of the most powerfully open gay men in the world. He lived with his partner openly, Antonio D'Amico. He was absolutely unapologetic about being gay. In an era when being openly gay could get you fired, it could get you beaten, it could get you denied housing, it could get you killed. Versace was just raising a middle finger to everybody. He was dressing princesses and dining with Keith Richards. And he was proof that visibility could be power. And if you had that power, maybe you just could live the life you wanted to.
And then there was Andrew Cunanan, who wanted the Versace version of gay life. The glamour, the acceptance, the wealth, the beauty, but was trapped in a world that mostly offered shame, secrecy, and survival. He wanted to be the exception, but the system kept reminding him he was the rule, just another copy.
So you have all this tension between the life Cunanan wanted to live and the life America offered. Glitz, glamour, jazzercise, and more blockbusters than the eye could see. This was one of the driving forces to this whole story. Again, we think.
And it's also what makes this case uniquely 90s. Because the 90s promised that anybody could be anything. The American dream was being rebranded in real time as reinvent yourself. Be who you want to be. Fake it till you make it. And Andrew Cunanan took that literally. He faked it with everything he had. And when the fake collapsed, so did he. So let's talk a little bit about Andrew Cunanan's origin story, so to speak. Andrew Philip Cunanan was born on August 31st, 1969 in National City, California, right outside San Diego. And from the very beginning, this kid's story was being written by other people like he was a character in someone else's book.
His father, Modesto Pete Cunanan, not a quick draw in the Wild Wild West, was a Filipino immigrant who had served in the U.S. Navy as a chief petty officer, and then he became a stockbroker. His mother, Mary Ann Stalachi, she was an Italian-American and devoutly Catholic. So right away, you got this real cross-cultural household with very different value systems. And dude, they're just smashing into each other like a strong safety tackling a running back.
And Modesto was obsessed with one thing above all else: status, social climbing, the appearance of success. He gave young Andrew a copy of Amy Vanderbilt's Complete Book of Etiquette, which was basically a manual on how to act rich, how to navigate high society, which fork to use at a dinner party. This is some Pretty Woman vibes, because you need to know how to open up that snail if you're getting anywhere in life.
So you just got a 9-year-old with this etiquette manual, and it's just like, hey, this is how you bag a duchess if you really want to, while doing cocaine like a gentleman.
Okay, well, it goes beyond that, guys. Modesto gave Andrew the master bedroom in the house, which is just bonkers to me. His siblings shared rooms. Andrew got the biggest one and his own bathroom. They bought him a car. They enrolled him in the Bishop School, which was one of the most elite college prep schools in San Diego, which was located in the wealthy La Jolla neighborhood. His siblings? Public school.
I don't feel like I belong in La Jolla.
No. We don't fit in there.
Or Coronado. So you got this family. It's literally organized, its entire structure around one very specific message. Andrew, he's special. Andrew, he's better than you. Andrew deserves more. You guys, I don't know how to break this to you. You're kind of not a big deal. You kind of suck. There's no leather-bound books for you. There's no soup for you.
His brother, Christopher, told Diane Sawyer in a 1997 interview that Andrew was their father's pride and joy. His sister Elena said he got everything he needed. There's a reason the FX show has a character call him Prince Andrew.
So you know that Andrew allegedly tested with an IQ of 147 in the 3rd grade?
Okay.
Which, yeah, damn.
Wow.
The only thing that makes me feel better about this IQ score is it does scale with age. So he was legitimately brilliant, precocious, in the top fraction of a percent for his age. We don't know if he got dumber. Now, I still feel bad about myself, but instead of channeling that intelligence into any real achievement, he channeled it into this performance. At school, he became known for all these wild, elaborate stories about his family. We all know this kid. The kid who claims he knows Mariah Carey and Prince.
And he told classmates that his father owned a pineapple plantation in the Philippines.
Now, whether they made pens there too is unclear, because there are such things as pineapple pens. Didn't know if you knew that.
Pen, pineapple, apple, pen. And if anyone gets that joke, good for you. You're as classy as us. So he said his father flew planes for Imelda Marcos and that his family was enormously wealthy, that they had connections to Filipino royalty. And listen, he was so smart and so charming that people actually did believe him. He could talk about anything: opera, wine, politics, history. He was performing a version of himself that was more interesting than reality, and people bought tickets to the show.
His high school yearbook named him most likely to be remembered, which I didn't win. I don't think I placed, which was a travesty.
Well, I'm glad I picked the underdog, babe. But now, the most likely to be remembered award, don't you think the whole thing is a bit of a foreshadowing, yeah?
There are no coincidences, Kathryn. No, but yes, I honestly think it is. And I think there is irony in this self-fulfilling prophecy.
All right, so then let's talk about what's going on inside, because this is where the differentiation really starts. Most describe Cunanan as a pathological liar and then just move on. But there's so much more going on here.
Behavioral researchers point to something called social learning theory. So Andrew grew up watching his father model two very specific things. First, status and performance matter more than truth. Modesto, fastest gun in the Philippines, performed wealth he didn't have. He performed success this man didn't achieve. Now, the second part, aggression, especially towards women, and he was taught that it is acceptable. Modesto verbally abused Mary Ann for years and suffered no ass whoopings for it. She suffered from depression so severe, she had to be hospitalized after Andrew's birth. Andrew absorbed all of this dysfunction. We all screw up our kids, but these are very broad strokes of bright pink on a white canvas.
And then the lying becomes a coping mechanism. And now this is important because when reality is painful, when your parents are fighting, when your mother is depressed, when your family isn't what you want it to be, a bright kid will build a better story. Pathological lying in cases like this isn't just deception. It really is just survival. It's a child constructing a world he can live in because the real one is just kind of unbearable.
Now, psychologists would call this fantasy a defense mechanism. And it's also associated with early development of a narcissistic personality disorder, especially when a parent is both overvaluing the child and modeling general assholery. You get this cocktail where the kid genuinely believes they're special because they've been told this their whole life. But they also know deep down that this specialness is built on nothing that's tangible. And that sounds sad, I know. But we also know this kid. He's the coach's or the principal's son. He's a rich kid that lives on top of the hill. He's that 5-star athlete. Or, just a normal, everyday kid who's also just a big asshole. There's not a strict curriculum for this degree.
And that's the fault in the line for Andrew Cunanan's psyche. He was told he was extraordinary, so he believed it. And he spent the rest of his life desperately trying to prove it, while knowing somewhere inside that it was all smoke. Being a narcissist while also having imposter syndrome, well, that's a hell of a thing.
Let's just talk about how in 1988, this whole thing blows up.
Yeah, it does. Now, Andrew is 19, and his father, Modesto, is accused of embezzling over $100,000 from his stock brokerage firm. And rather than face consequences, rather than stand up and deal with reality, Modesto abandons his family. No warning, no goodbye, no leaving to buy a pack of cigarettes and a gallon of milk. He just flees to the Philippines.
The man who taught Andrew that image is absolutely everything, that you perform your way all the way to the top, that you just go out and Wolf of Wall Street this whole life, son. He turns out to be a complete fraud. He's a con man. And instead of facing consequences, the man just vanishes. He literally modeled for this son the exact playbook Andrew would later follow. You would build a lie, you would live inside it, and when that lie collapsed, he just disappeared. He goes so hard motherfuckers wanted to find him.
That shit cray. You set me up for these songs.
Your mind sets you up for these songs. Your dysfunction sets you up for these songs.
It's true. Yeah. Now, the family was left with nothing. Marianne had to go on welfare, and she eventually lived on food stamps for the rest of her life until her death in 2012. The house was gone, the illusion was gone, and everything Modesto had performed was revealed as hollow. Plus, all that's just depressing, so let me tell you a joke to lighten the mood.
Yes.
Okay, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
In honor of Modesto the cowboy, what did the cowboy say when his dog ran away? Do you know?
No.
Doggone.
Doggone, I like it. It's not going to get less depressing, so here we go.
No more jokes, guys.
Andrew actually flew to the Philippines to visit his father. He stayed there for about a month, and when he came back, what he told his family members, his father was living in absolute squalor. Now, given his shady nature in general, this could have been true or not, but if it was, the fantasy of this powerful, connected father was replaced by this reality of a man that was just hiding in a rundown apartment in a foreign country, and he eventually joined a survivalist cult. Did you know that?
I didn't.
Because nothing says get your shit together than becoming a survivalist cult member.
And around this same time, Andrew came out as gay to his mother. And it didn't go well, you guys. Marianne, who he said was a devout Catholic woman, she just couldn't accept it. There was a physical altercation. Andrew threw her against the wall and dislocated her shoulder. And he was just simply following in his father's footsteps. I guess you could say he was paying for the sins of his father.
So in a space of a few months, his father abandons the family. The family's money is gone. Andrew visits his father and sees him for what he is, and his mother rejects his sexuality completely. His identity has been ripped away. So all in all, things were definitely looking up.
Totally. Now, after that, he dropped out of UC San Diego, where he'd been studying American history of all things, and moved to the Castro district in San Francisco. And that's where Andrew Cunanan 2.0 was born, the version designed to get him everything his father had promised but never delivered on. And this version was built entirely on three things: charm, beauty, and lies.
Cunanan spent the 1990s building this persona in San Francisco, but by the early to mid-90s, Andrew Cunanan becomes a fixture in San Diego's gay social scene, specifically the Hillcrest neighborhood and the wealthy La Jolla area. And his method was, well, as old as time and the loose-skinned people involved.
Wow. He would cultivate relationships with older, wealthy, often closeted gay men. He was young, handsome, incredibly well-spoken, and could talk about absolutely anything. Like we said, opera, politics, wine, architecture, literature. He made people feel seen. He made them feel special. He was quite possibly the best conversationalist in the room. Like you, if video games come up.
Don't let me hear Zelda in a conversation.
And we will never return from the conversation, guys.
So in return, these men would shower him with gifts, credit cards, trips to Europe, designer clothes, sports cars. He even used fake names. At one point, he was going by Andrew De Silva, and he claimed to be a son, again, of a pineapple plantation owner. Which, there's a million different stories he could have come up with that didn't involve plantation and freaking pineapples. I kind of wonder if he was an avid pineapple juice drinker, and the implications of that I do not want to discuss.
I mean, it's niche, but there have to be weirder influencers than pineapple influencers. But you're right, his stories were ridiculous. All in all, he became his father's lie. And it's not just irony, that's actually childhood trauma.
The most important one of these relationships was with a man named Norman Blatchford, who, by that name, sounds like an aristocrat. Wealthy, older, generous, Blatchford essentially kept Andrew in total luxury for years. He gave him a nice apartment. He had unlimited spending. The dream life Andrew had always performed was now finally, through Blatchford's money, becoming tangibly real. This is like that Anna Nicole Smith story.
Yeah, but it was still a performance. And in 1996, Blatchford got wise. He started tracking Andrew's spending and discovered that the man he'd been supporting wasn't Andrew De Silva, son of a plantation owner. He was Andrew Cunanan, son of an embezzler living in a Manila apartment. And the relationship ended.
This is where Baudrillard theory really clicks. Andrew wasn't just pretending to be rich. He was simulating richness so completely that the line between act and actor didn't even exist anymore. This man lived in nice places. He dined at the best restaurants. He wore the right clothes. He had the manners, the references, the vocabulary. He said things like modicum. There was no real Andrew underneath this performance. The performance was the person. Andrew was no longer Andrew. He was and who? I had to, I'm sorry.
This wasn't just about Andrew being a con artist. This was about a culture that made this kind of existence possible. In the 90s, in fashion and gay culture, in American consumer culture broadly, identity was being commodified. You are what you wear. You are who you're seen with. You are the story you tell. So Andrew Cunanan took that logic to its absolute endpoint.
And at the endpoint, and at the same time, the Blatchford relationship was ending. So was everything else. David Madsen, a Minneapolis architect Andrew called the love of my life, he broke things off. Madsen told friends he sensed something shady about Andrew, which, yes, Andrew was as shady as a redwood tree.
And Jeffrey Trail, a former Navy officer who Andrew considered his best friend, practically his brother, well, he also pulled away. Trail was tired of the lies, the erratic behavior, the manipulation. He reportedly told friends he'd had a massive falling out with Andrew and he never wanted to see him again.
So by early 1997, let's break down where Andrew Cunanan stands. Sugar daddy, gone. Love of his life, gone. Best friend, gone. Credit cards, completely maxed out. He's reportedly abusing painkillers and drinking heavily. Friends notice dark moods, probably due to the copious amounts of painkillers and booze. And this leads to fits of anger that hadn't been there before. Now, this was either the start of a diehard washed-up cop saves the day story, or you know how this whole thing ends.
Now, in clinical terms, what Andrew is experiencing looks like narcissistic collapse. When a person has built their entire identity, their entire sense of self-worth on external validation, and then that validation is suddenly withdrawn from every direction all at once, the psyche doesn't just feel sad, it feels annihilated. It's not, I'm upset, it's, I don't exist anymore.
There is a psychological theory called empty self theory, and this was developed by Philip Cushman in 1990. He argued that modern American culture creates people with chronic emotional hunger. This is a hollowness that we try to fill with consumption, romantic relationships, celebrity worship, drugs, and self-reinvention. And because it's the 90s, again, a lot of blockbusters and heavy hold hair gel. And when those fillers are stripped away, what's left is nothing, emptiness. Now, I personally have a theory. I have a lot of theories. I personally have a theory that today's society, where the news cycle travels so fast and the consumption is more than anybody can eat, I think it actually creates a barrier. You're like allowed to wallow since everything is moving so forward and so fast. So if something goes wrong, like a breakup, you move with that flow until you bump into something else. Could be bumping into another girl. Could be fighting CrossFit. The 90s, though, move both fast and extremely slow. Andrew Cunanan was the empty self made flesh. He's brooding in a slow cycle of this excess where his social media was people right in front of him. And when that disappeared, he was truly alone. So there's no online dating sites to turn to. There's no reels to eat away at your empty thoughts. This man was Frankenstein's monster, just wearing Gucci and Versace and maybe a starter jacket.
And there was one more thing. In early 1997, Andrew told a counselor he believed he was HIV positive. So in the context of the 90s, where an HIV diagnosis was still essentially a death sentence in many people's minds, where it carried crushing social stigma, that belief would have just been the final blow. Although, and this is crucial, his autopsy later revealed he was HIV negative, but the fear alone was enough.
And one final lie, but this one was to himself. And that's the thing about pathological liars. It's not just others they're lying to. It's dogs, it's cats, it's birds, it's the wall, it's the mirror.
So to sum up where we are, it's April 1997. Andrew Cunanan is broke, alone, rejected by everyone who mattered to him, drinking, potentially facing what he believes is a fatal disease, and watching his carefully constructed identity dissolve in real time. The simulation has crashed, and the empty self is staring into the void.
And then he calls his credit card company and begs them to extend his limit, which is usually a bad financial sign. He says he needs a one-way ticket to Minneapolis. He tells friends he's going to go take care of some business, which maybe be a cry for help to his friends. But at this point, all these bridges, they're just hanging on a thread.
Nobody asks what the business is he's got to attend to.
Now, that's where we're going to pick up in part 2. Because that business Andrew Cunanan was about to take care of turned out to be a cross-country killing spree that ended on the front steps of a Miami Beach mansion at the feet of Medusa.
That is where we're going to leave you this week. I know we haven't even gotten to the murders yet, but that's by design. Because understanding who Andrew Cunanan was, understanding what the 1990s were doing to people's sense of identity and worth, understanding the mythology of beauty and destruction that Versace literally built his empire on, Well, all of that is essential to understanding what comes next.
This isn't just a crime story. It's a story about what happens when a culture worships beauty so intensely that it creates gods and monsters. Or what happens when a podcaster says things as dramatic as gods and monsters. In part 2, we're going to walk you through every step on Andrew Cunanan's killing spree. Minneapolis, Chicago, there's New Jersey and Miami. 5 victims in total, each one revealing something new about what was driving him. We'll cover one of the biggest failed manhunts in FBI history. And we'll come back to Versace. We're going to come back to Medusa. And to the question nobody has ever been able to answer. Why? And we'll close with what happened after. To the Versace empire, to Cunanan's family, and to the 1990s itself.
Now, if you're listening and you know someone who loves true crime but wants something a little deeper, someone who's into the psychology, the philosophy, the 90s nostalgia, and doesn't mind laughing in between the dark parts, we'll send them to this episode. Because that's how we grow. Word of mouth from people like you who actually get what we're trying to do here. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please take 30 seconds and leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening. It genuinely helps the algorithm show us to other people who might love this kind of deep dive. And we're fully at its mercy, which honestly feels very on brand for a show about the 90s. And if you want more content on part 1 of this case, the behind the scenes extras of all of it, come find us on TikTok and Instagram at Mugshot Mysteries Podcast. We'll see you next week for part 2, The Killing of a Dream. But until then...
Man, stop staring at that mirror too long.
Yeah, because it might stare back. But no, truly, as always, Gabriel, what have we learned today?
We have learned that you can keep people wanting more by just breaking something up into 2 pieces. Now, whether that's a podcast or a brownie, pot or otherwise, just don't eat the second half, guys. The second half is a half that brings the paramedics. We've learned that the 90s were a hell of a drug. And I swear to you, you just had to be there to understand why all these millennials and all these Gen X, they're always going on and on about how great it was not having a cell phone or knowing what an influencer was. We've learned that the zeitgeist can change and mold a society you grow up in. That universal things like beauty and envy and desire can mean different things just depending merely on the decade and whether or not you had an AOL free subscription. We've learned that sometimes when you look into that mirror, you're going to find something you weren't ready to see in yourself, a revelation, inspiration, or something that stops you cold and stagnant, like these wrinkles, something that turns you to stone. The story of Medusa teaches us the fierce power of trauma manifesting itself into retribution. And it's something we'll explore soon, we promise.
Mugshot Mysteries likes the sound of a mystery that needs to be found. Miami is so hot right now, like Mugshot says. Murder is abound, and Medusa makes no sound. Versace flew close to the sun, burned by the worship culture of a fashion world. Let's not forget about Brad Pitt, whose abs look so sick. You wanna lick? How many does it take to get to the center of the mystery?